It was a regular Wednesday morning, and the sun was just beginning to rise over the quiet suburban streets. The school bus rumbled down the familiar roads, its yellow paint shining in the early light. Inside, children were chatting, laughing, and getting ready for the day ahead. Some were sharing stories about their homework, while others were excitedly talking about what they wanted to do after school. The bus driver, a calm and friendly man named Mr. Thompson, kept his eyes on the road, occasionally glancing at the mirrors to check on the children. The bus had been on this route for years. Mr. Thompson knew every turn, every stop, and every child by name. The parents trusted him, and the children felt safe in his presence. He enjoyed the mornings, greeting the kids as they climbed aboard, and seeing their little faces light up with excitement. Today seemed no different, and everything felt normal. The streets were quiet, and the bus moved steadily toward its next stop. Suddenly, something caught Mr. Thompson's eye up ahead. A low rumble, different from the usual morning sounds, grew louder. He squinted into the distance and saw a group of motorcycles approaching. At first, he thought it was just a few bikers passing through, but as they got closer, his heart skipped a beat. There were more than a dozen, all riding together in a tight group. They were moving slowly, as if they were planning something, and they were heading straight for the bus. The children noticed the motorcycles too. Some of them pressed their faces against the windows, curious and a little scared. The laughter inside the bus quieted down as the bikers got closer. Their engines roared, filling the air with a deep, threatening sound. Mr. Thompson felt a knot in his stomach. He had dealt with unexpected situations before, but this was different. This felt dangerous. The bikers started to surround the bus. They moved from the front, back, and sides, creating a blockade. The bus, which had always moved freely along these streets, now felt trapped. Mr. Thompson's hands tightened on the steering wheel, and he tried to stay calm for the sake of the children. He took a deep breath and glanced at the rearview mirror, seeing the frightened faces of the kids. Some were holding onto their seats, others were whispering to each other, and a few were crying quietly. "It's okay, everyone. Just stay calm," Mr. Thompson said in a steady voice. "We'll get through this." He wasn't sure if he believed it himself, but he knew the children needed reassurance. He scanned the surroundings, looking for a way to maneuver the bus out of the situation, but the bikers had it well covered. There was no obvious way to escape. The bikers were not ordinary people riding for fun. Their appearance was intimidating, with leather jackets, tattoos, and a certain hardness in their expressions. They circled the bus slowly, revving their engines and making loud noises. One of them leaned toward the window, shouting something that Mr. Thompson couldn't quite hear over the roar of the motorcycles. The children pressed closer together, their fear growing with every passing second. Inside the bus, a tense silence settled. The usual chatter was replaced with nervous whispers and muffled cries. One child clutched a small toy tightly, holding onto it as if it could somehow protect them. Another tried to comfort a younger friend, whispering that everything would be okay, even though their own eyes were wide with fear. Mr. Thompson could feel the panic spreading, and he knew he had to act carefully. He tried speaking to the bikers, keeping his voice calm but firm. "Please let the children go. We don't want any trouble," he said, hoping that reason might reach them. But the bikers just laughed and shouted louder, revving their engines in response. Their behavior made it clear that they were enjoying the fear they were causing, and that only made the situation worse. The children's reactions were natural and human. Some squeezed their eyes shut, hoping that if they couldn't see the danger, it might go away. Others clung to each other, sharing comfort in the small group. A few braver ones tried to peek out of the windows, their curiosity battling with their fear. The tension inside the bus was almost unbearable, and Mr. Thompson felt the weight of responsibility on his shoulders. He had to protect these kids no matter what. As the bus sat surrounded, the minutes felt like hours. The engine's roar and the bikers' laughter created a chaotic symphony that filled the street. Mr. Thompson tried to think of a plan, but every option seemed risky. He couldn't drive through them without endangering the children, and staying put didn't seem safe either. His mind raced, searching for a solution that could keep everyone safe. Meanwhile, the children's imagination began to run wild. Some whispered stories of heroes who might come and save them, while others imagined the worst. The fear was real, but so was their hope that someone would appear to protect them. Mr. Thompson noticed this and tried to hold on to that small sliver of optimism. He knew that panicking wouldn't help, and he needed to stay calm for them. Outside, the bikers continued their slow, menacing circle. One of them leaned down and shouted again, this time closer to the driver's window. Mr. Thompson could see the intensity in his eyes, the thrill of intimidation. The bus felt like a small island in a sea of danger, and the tension was rising by the second. The children's whispers grew louder, some asking questions they didn't really expect answers to. "What are they going to do?" one child asked softly. Another replied, "I don't know, but I hope someone comes." Mr. Thompson tried to soothe them. "Stay calm, everyone. We're going to be okay. Just stay in your seats and hold on." He spoke with as much authority as he could muster, even though his heart was racing. He kept scanning the bikers, looking for any sign that they might leave or show mercy, but there was none. They were intent on keeping the bus surrounded, creating fear and tension. The situation seemed to stretch endlessly. The bikers were everywhere, and the children were clinging to each other in silent fear. Mr. Thompson felt a mix of anxiety and determination. He couldn't let panic take over. He had to keep everyone safe until help arrived or until something changed the situation. His eyes never left the bikers, searching for any opportunity to act, any chance to get the bus moving safely again. Time seemed suspended as the bus remained trapped. The sounds of engines and laughter echoed in the quiet neighborhood, contrasting sharply with the terrified whispers inside the bus. The children's eyes darted from window to window, trying to understand what was happening, while Mr. Thompson's mind raced through every possible scenario. He knew that staying calm was the only way to help them through this. Panic would only make things worse. Suddenly, a noise in the distance caught everyone's attention. A different kind of engine sound, louder and more powerful, grew closer. Mr. Thompson instinctively felt a change in the air. The bikers slowed slightly, turning their heads toward the source of the sound. The children pressed against the windows, curious despite their fear. Something was coming, and it was unlike anything they had seen before. The tension remained high, but there was a spark of hope. The bus was still surrounded, but the approaching sound suggested that help might be on the way. The children clutched each other, their fear mingled with anticipation. Mr. Thompson took a deep breath, holding on to that small glimmer of optimism. He knew that the next moments could change everything. As the powerful engine noise grew louder, the bikers stopped their circling for a moment, confused and uncertain. The children's faces pressed against the windows, wide-eyed and full of wonder. Something was about to happen, something that could turn this frightening morning into a story they would never forget. The bus remained in place, still surrounded, but now there was a shift in the energy. The stage was set for an unexpected turn, and everyone on the bus could feel it. The morning air had grown heavier, filled with the sound of motorcycle engines and the tension of uncertainty. The school bus remained trapped, its bright yellow frame surrounded by the group of bikers who refused to move. Inside, the children were whispering, some clutching their backpacks like shields, others holding hands with friends they had known for only a few months but now felt a deep bond with in shared fear. Mr. Thompson tried to keep his voice calm, but even he felt the anxiety building in his chest. "Stay calm, everyone," he said again, glancing in the rearview mirror to make sure each child heard him. "We'll figure this out. Nobody's going to get hurt." But the words felt fragile in the thick, tense air. The bikers weren't moving. Some of them leaned toward the windows, shouting, but their words were drowned out by the roar of the engines. The kids pressed their faces against the glass, wide-eyed and frozen in place. One boy had a small toy truck in his hands and squeezed it so hard that the paint started to chip. A girl whispered to herself over and over, "It's okay, it's okay," even as her fingers gripped the seat in front of her. Mr. Thompson's mind raced. He had driven this route countless times, but he had never imagined a situation like this. The bus was blocked in every direction. There was no alley to turn into, no side street to escape down. The bikers had planned their positions carefully, and there was no room to maneuver without risking the children's safety. He gripped the steering wheel tightly, knuckles white, and tried to think of anything that could buy them time. The bikers laughed, the sound harsh and unsettling, echoing off the nearby houses. Some of the kids shrank back, covering their ears, while others peeked cautiously, trying to see what was happening outside. Mr. Thompson could feel their fear radiating through the bus. He had to do something to keep them calm, to prevent panic from taking over. He began speaking to the bikers directly. "Please, we're just trying to get the children to school. Nobody needs to get hurt. There's no reason for this. The bikers ignored him, some waving their hands in exaggerated gestures, others revving their engines louder, as if daring him to try anything. Mr. Thompson swallowed hard. He knew that any sudden movement could escalate the situation, but doing nothing also felt dangerous. He had to maintain control, even as the fear inside him grew. Inside the bus, the children were beginning to talk amongst themselves, their voices low and tremulous. "What if they don't let us go?" one whispered. "I don't want to be stuck here all day," another said. One child buried their face in their hands, trying to imagine a place where they could feel safe again. Mr. Thompson listened to them quietly, feeling the weight of responsibility settle heavily on his shoulders. Each child's fear was real, and he could not let it overwhelm them. He tried to keep them occupied with conversation, asking about their favorite subjects in school, about what they wanted to do after class. Anything to shift their minds from the immediate danger. Some of the kids answered, but many were too scared, their eyes still glued to the bikers outside. Mr. Thompson knew that distraction might not be enough, but it was all he could offer for now. The bikers were showing signs of impatience. One of them moved closer to the driver's side window, peering in and pointing at Mr. Thompson. The man shouted something, but it was hard to understand over the sound of engines. Another biker circled to the back of the bus, revving his motorcycle in a way that made the bus shake slightly. The children flinched and a few began to cry quietly. Mr. Thompson's heart sank, but he forced himself to maintain composure. He could not allow panic to spread. He looked around the bus, taking note of every detail. Each seat held a child, and each child was counting on him. He tried to make eye contact with the older ones, the ones who seemed a little braver. "Stay strong," he mouthed, giving them a small nod. Their eyes met his, and for a moment they understood that he was doing everything he could to keep them safe. Outside, the bikers seemed to be enjoying the fear they had created. They shouted, gestured, and circled the bus with a deliberate slowness as if time itself had stretched. The roar of engines became almost deafening, bouncing off the houses and creating a sense of isolation. The children pressed together, sharing whispers and silent prayers. Mr. Thompson took a deep breath and tried to think through every possible scenario. How could he get them out safely? Was calling for help an option, or would it escalate things further? One of the younger children, a small boy with round glasses, asked, "Why are they doing this?" Mr. Thompson paused for a moment, searching for words that would soothe without lying. "Sometimes," he said carefully, "people do things that don't make sense. But it's not our fault, and we'll get through this together." The boy nodded, gripping his seat tightly while the others listened in silence. There was a small sense of relief that someone was explaining it, even if it didn't make the situation any less frightening. Mr. Thompson felt a wave of empathy for them. They were just kids, and all they wanted was a normal day at school. Instead, they were trapped in fear. Time seemed to stretch endlessly. Every minute felt heavier, every second filled with tension. Mr. Thompson kept checking his mirrors, his eyes darting to every biker, trying to anticipate their next move. He spoke softly to the children, telling them about the school day ahead, about their friends, and about things they could look forward to. Some of the kids nodded, and a few even smiled faintly, but the fear was still there, hovering like a shadow. Suddenly, a louder roar of an engine echoed from down the street. All the bikers turned toward the sound, their attention momentarily diverted. The children's heads turned too, some squinting, trying to see what was coming. Mr. Thompson's heart skipped a beat. He didn't know what it was, but it felt different, stronger. There was a shift in the air, a sense that something unexpected was about to happen. The bikers hesitated, their movement slowing as the new sound grew closer. The children pressed against each other, some whispering, "Is someone coming to help us?" Mr. Thompson's pulse quickened. He could feel the change too, a tension that wasn't fear but anticipation. He kept talking to the kids, telling them to stay calm, to keep their seats, to hold on a little longer. One child, braver than the rest, peeked out the window and whispered, "I think someone's coming." Mr. Thompson glanced outside, trying to see beyond the bikers. There, in the distance, a figure on a motorcycle was approaching. The engine's roar was different from the others, commanding and powerful. It cut through the noise of the bikers, demanding attention. The bikers slowed even more, uncertainty creeping into their expressions. The children's eyes widened, a mix of fear and hope reflecting in them. Something was about to change. The figure on the motorcycle drew closer, moving with confidence and authority. The bikers exchanged glances, their previous bravado faltering slightly. The children whispered to each other, some barely daring to breathe. Mr. Thompson felt a surge of cautious hope. He didn't know who it was yet, but the presence was undeniable. The energy in the air shifted from pure fear to something more complicated, something that hinted at rescue. The bus remained trapped, the bikers still circling, but their energy had changed. They were no longer the unstoppable force they had seemed just moments before. There was hesitation now, uncertainty in their movements. The children pressed their faces against the windows, watching. Waiting. Mr. Thompson gripped the steering wheel tightly, every sense alert as the figure approached with quiet confidence, ready to intervene in a way no one inside the bus had anticipated. The morning that had begun as ordinary had turned into something extraordinary, and the story was far from over. The sound of the approaching motorcycle grew louder and stronger, cutting through the tension in the air. The bikers surrounding the bus slowed their pace, uncertainty flickering across their faces. The children pressed their noses to the windows, their small hands gripping the edges, their eyes wide with a mix of fear and anticipation. Mr. Thompson's heart pounded in his chest, and he took a deep breath, silently telling himself to stay calm and steady. As the motorcycle drew closer, it became clear that this was no ordinary rider. The engine's roar had a commanding tone, and the figure on the bike carried an air of authority that was impossible to ignore. The bikers who had moments ago been menacing now glanced at each other nervously. The confidence they had projected seemed to waver under the gaze of this newcomer. The street felt charged with an invisible energy, as if the arrival of this person had shifted the balance of power. The children could not believe what they were seeing. The figure on the motorcycle was unmistakable, someone they had seen countless times on television and in movies. A wave of recognition and excitement swept through the bus, mingling with the lingering fear. They whispered to each other in disbelief, some even pointing at the approaching figure. Mr. Thompson noticed the change in their expressions and allowed himself a small glimmer of hope. Perhaps help had arrived just in time. The motorcycle came to a slow, deliberate stop near the front of the bus. The rider dismounted with ease and confidence, movements precise and assured. Every eye on the bus, both inside and out, followed the figure as they walked forward. The bikers who had been surrounding the bus instinctively took a step back, unsure of how to respond. Their laughter had faded, replaced by uneasy silence. Mr. Thompson watched closely, assessing the situation. He knew that this was a moment of opportunity. The figure's presence alone seemed to command respect and caution from the bikers. He took another deep breath and addressed the children softly, trying to keep their attention focused. "It's okay, stay calm. Someone is here to help us. Just hold on for a little while longer." The children nodded, some still in disbelief, their hands gripping each other, or the edges of their seats. Their faces were a mixture of awe and cautious relief. Mr. Thompson's words did little to alleviate the fear completely, but they provided a small anchor in the storm of uncertainty. The figure approached the bus slowly, making eye contact with the bikers as they moved. There was no rush, no panic, just a steady, unshakable presence that seemed to command attention. The bikers hesitated, exchanging glances that betrayed their confusion. None of them expected someone to confront them with such authority, and it was clear that they were unsure how to proceed. One of the bikers tried to step forward, perhaps to assert dominance, but the figure's calm and deliberate stance made him pause. The street, once dominated by the bikers' aggressive energy, now belonged to this newcomer. The children on the bus pressed closer to the windows, their faces reflecting a mix of fear, excitement, and hope. Mr. Thompson felt a strange sense of relief. The danger was not over, but the balance had shifted in a way that might give them a chance to get out safely. The figure stopped directly in front of the bus, standing tall and confident. Every movement was measured, deliberate, and full of authority. The bikers, sensing the presence of someone they could not easily intimidate, slowed their circling, their expressions showing signs of doubt. The engine noises faded slightly, replaced by the tense silence of the standoff. The children's whispers filled the bus, soft but filled with awe. "It's him," one whispered. "I can't believe it," another said. Mr. Thompson watched the interaction carefully, understanding that the presence of this figure was more than just symbolic. It was practical. The bikers were no longer acting with the same recklessness. They were unsure of their next move. He glanced back at the children, encouraging them to stay calm and keep their seats. He spoke softly. "We're going to be okay. Just stay calm. Everything is going to change now." The figure's gaze moved slowly over the bikers, who now appeared visibly unsure. The street that had seemed dominated by intimidation moments ago now felt like a stage for confrontation, in which the newcomer had all the control. The bikers' posturing faltered. The roar of engines was no longer a symbol of threat, but a backdrop to a moment of reckoning. Mr. Thompson felt his heart rate slow slightly. Perhaps the most dangerous part of the morning was coming to a turning point. Inside the bus, the children's fear began to ebb slightly, replaced by curiosity and hope. They watched intently as the newcomer took slow steps toward the bikers, radiating confidence and authority. Some whispered to each other, imagining the stories they would tell about this morning. Their terror had not vanished, but it had shifted, becoming a mixture of awe and cautious optimism. The bikers hesitated, some revving their engines nervously, others standing with uncertain postures. They had not anticipated resistance in this form, and the figure's calm approach unnerved them. The children leaned forward in their seats, gripping the edges and peeking through the windows. Mr. Thompson continued to reassure them softly, telling them to stay calm, and that help had arrived. His voice, steady and calm, acted as an anchor amidst the tension. The newcomer spoke, their voice calm but commanding, addressing the bikers directly. Words were exchanged, though muffled and hard to hear from inside the bus. The bikers' expressions changed as they listened, a mix of surprise, hesitation, and uncertainty crossing their faces. They had been prepared to intimidate a bus full of children, but they had not counted on a presence so formidable and unwavering. The power dynamic had shifted, and they were beginning to realize it. One of the bikers tried to assert dominance, stepping forward with a confident gesture, but the newcomer's stance and gaze stopped him in his tracks. The street seemed to hold its breath. The children pressed against the windows, holding their breath, their eyes wide. Mr. Thompson could feel the tension, but he also felt a spark of hope that he had not felt before. The presence of this person was changing everything. The bikers exchanged nervous glances, their confidence waning. The newcomer continued to advance slowly, calmly, without any aggression, but with unmistakable authority. The children watched in awe, their whispers now filled with excitement and disbelief. Mr. Thompson continued to speak softly, encouraging them to stay calm, to hold on, and to trust that they were about to be safe. As the standoff continued, it became clear that the bikers were no longer in control. Their previous bravado had diminished under the weight of the newcomer's presence. The street, once dominated by threat and fear, was now charged with a sense of protection and authority. The children's fear began to transform into cautious hope. Mr. Thompson felt a sense of relief, though he knew that the situation was still tense and unpredictable. The newcomer continued to move slowly, their every action deliberate and confident. The bikers' hesitation grew, and some began to step back, unsure of how to respond. The children on the bus whispered to each other, their fear giving way to awe and disbelief. Mr. Thompson watched the scene unfold, grateful that help had arrived in the form of someone who could command respect and authority without violence. The tension in the air remained, but it had shifted. The bikers were no longer circling aggressively. They were hesitant, unsure of their next move. The children pressed their faces to the windows, watching intently, their small hands gripping each other or the edges of their seats. Mr. Thompson continued to speak softly, reassuring them and encouraging calm. The arrival of this figure had changed everything, and he could sense that the dangerous standoff might soon be resolved. For the first time since the morning began, there was a sense of possibility. The bikers were no longer the dominant force. The newcomer had taken control without a single act of aggression. The children's fear was still present, but it had transformed into a mixture of awe, excitement, and cautious hope. Mr. Thompson could feel the weight of responsibility lift slightly, knowing that the presence of this person had created a chance for safety. The newcomer's approach continued, slow and deliberate, commanding attention and respect. The bikers' postures reflected their uncertainty, and the street, once filled with fear and intimidation, now held a sense of anticipation and possibility. The children on the bus whispered in disbelief, their eyes wide with awe. Mr. Thompson continued to speak softly, encouraging them to remain calm and to trust that safety was within reach. The standoff remained tense, but the dynamic had shifted completely. The bikers, once menacing and aggressive, were now uncertain and hesitant. The children pressed forward in their seats, watching, hoping, and beginning to believe that the danger might be over. Mr. Thompson felt a cautious relief, knowing that the arrival of this figure had changed the course of the morning in a profound and unexpected way. The scene was set for what could become a safe resolution, all because of the commanding presence and calm authority of one individual. The street seemed to hold its breath as the newcomer faced the bikers, standing tall and unshaken. The engines that had been roaring moments ago were now quieter, the bikers exchanging uneasy glances. The children on the bus pressed closer to the windows, their hands gripping the edges, hearts racing with anticipation. Mr. Thompson took a deep breath, telling himself to stay calm and steady. He had to protect these children, and now there was a chance that the danger could end without anyone getting hurt. The newcomer's presence alone changed the atmosphere. There was no need for aggression. Authority and confidence radiated from them, making the bikers hesitate. One of the men tried to step forward, attempting to reclaim control of the situation, but the newcomer's calm gaze and steady posture stopped him in his tracks. The children watched in awe, whispering to one another, their fear slowly giving way to hope. Mr. Thompson kept a careful eye on every move, ready to act if needed. The bikers were now in a standoff they had not expected. They had surrounded the bus, intending to intimidate, but no one had counted on a presence like this. Someone whose confidence and calm authority commanded respect without a single act of violence. They revved their engines nervously, unsure of how to proceed. The children's whispers grew louder, filled with excitement and disbelief. Some of them even began to smile cautiously, sensing that help had truly arrived. The newcomer spoke, their voice clear and commanding. They addressed the bikers directly, telling them to step back and leave the children alone. There was no anger in their tone, only firm authority. The bikers, who had moments ago been menacing and aggressive, now seemed unsure. They exchanged glances, hesitation creeping into their movements. Some looked ready to argue, but others seemed ready to retreat. The street, once dominated by threat and fear, was now under the control of someone with unwavering confidence. Inside the bus, the children's reactions were a mixture of awe, disbelief, and cautious hope. They pressed against each other, whispering softly, wondering if the danger was really ending. Mr. Thompson spoke softly to them, telling them to stay calm and hold on. He could see the shift happening outside, the bikers unsure of their next move, and he allowed himself a glimmer of relief. The newcomer had changed the balance, and now safety seemed possible. The bikers attempted to maintain a show of strength, some revving their engines, others gesturing as if they still held control. But their confidence was clearly shaken. The newcomer's calm presence and steady gaze forced them to hesitate. The children on the bus watched, wide-eyed, as the once dominant group began to falter. Mr. Thompson's voice remained steady, reassuring them and urging patience. Help had arrived, and it was working. One of the bikers, seemingly the leader, took a step forward, trying to regain authority. The newcomer didn't move, didn't flinch. Their presence was so commanding that the biker stopped mid-step, uncertainty flashing across his face. The children whispered to one another, sensing the tension, their fear mingling with excitement. Mr. Thompson could feel the weight of responsibility easing slightly. He knew the children's safety was no longer entirely in his hands. The newcomer had taken control. The standoff continued, each second feeling longer than the last. The bikers were trapped in a web of their own making, their intimidation tactics neutralized by the calm authority of this one person. The children watched every movement, their fear gradually transforming into awe. Mr. Thompson kept speaking softly, reminding them to stay in their seats and hold on. He could feel the energy shifting. The threat that had seemed overwhelming was now wavering. The leader of the bikers took another hesitant step, trying to assert dominance. The newcomer's gaze remained unwavering, and their calm, firm voice carried authority that the bikers could not ignore. Some of the men muttered to each other, clearly unsure of what to do next. Their aggressive posture faltered, replaced by nervous glances and uncertainty. The children on the bus whispered excitedly, their faces pressed to the windows. They were beginning to believe that the danger could end without anyone being hurt. The newcomer continued to speak, their words clear and firm. They told the bikers to step back, to leave the bus and the children alone. There was no threat in their tone, only unwavering authority. The bikers hesitated, some taking a small step back, others pausing entirely. The children's excitement grew, their whispers louder, but still cautious. Mr. Thompson watched carefully, ready to act if needed, but feeling a deep sense of relief that the situation was finally shifting in their favor. Time seemed to stretch as the standoff continued. The bikers were no longer in control. Their confidence had eroded under the newcomer's calm authority. The children watched intently, their fear replaced by cautious hope. Mr. Thompson continued to speak softly, reassuring the children, encouraging patience, and reinforcing that help had arrived. The street, once filled with threat and fear, now held a tense but growing sense of safety. Some of the bikers, recognizing that their intimidation tactics were failing, began to step back. The children on the bus pressed their faces to the windows, whispering to each other in disbelief. Mr. Thompson's voice remained calm, soft and steady, reinforcing the sense of hope that was beginning to take hold. The leader of the bikers looked around, seeing the hesitation among his group, and finally nodded. The energy that had dominated the street just moments ago was dissipating. Slowly, the bikers began to move away from the bus, their posture subdued, their engines quieting. The children watched in awe as the group retreated, their fear giving way to relief and disbelief. Mr. Thompson exhaled deeply, feeling the tension lift slightly. The newcomer remained by the bus, their presence still commanding, ensuring that the bikers would leave entirely before the children were truly safe. As the bikers finally dispersed, the street returned to a quiet normalcy. The children cheered softly, some clapping their hands, others hugging friends. Their eyes remained wide with awe, still processing the events that had unfolded. Mr. Thompson turned to them, a relieved smile on his face. "It's over now," he said gently. "We're safe." The children whispered in excitement, recounting what had just happened, amazed that the situation had resolved without anyone being hurt. The newcomer remained calm, watching the last of the bikers ride away. Their presence had been enough to restore safety and order, and the children's awe was matched only by Mr. Thompson's gratitude. The danger that had seemed overwhelming just minutes before had been neutralized by one person's courage and calm authority. The street, once dominated by fear, was now filled with a sense of relief and wonder. Mr. Thompson addressed the children, encouraging them to relax, to sit back, and to breathe. He explained that sometimes help comes from unexpected places, and that courage and calmness can change even the most frightening situations. The children listened intently, their faces still wide with awe and excitement. They were beginning to understand that this morning would be remembered forever, not for the fear, but for the heroism and protection that had appeared when it was needed most. The newcomer nodded at Mr. Thompson and the children, their calm and authoritative presence a reassurance that the danger had truly passed. The children waved, some shyly, others with enthusiasm, grateful for the intervention that had saved them. Mr. Thompson allowed himself a small smile, feeling the weight of responsibility lift. The bus, once trapped and surrounded, was now free to continue its journey safely. The children's excitement grew as they shared whispers and stories about the hero who had appeared when they needed help most. The bikers were gone, the street quiet, and the children were safe. Mr. Thompson continued driving slowly, keeping an eye on the road but also letting the children process the events. Their faces reflected a mixture of relief, awe, and excitement. They had witnessed something extraordinary, and the memory of this morning would stay with them forever. The newcomer had not only neutralized the threat but had done so in a way that ensured everyone remained unharmed. The children's whispers filled the bus, recounting every detail, and Mr. Thompson smiled, grateful that the morning had turned from fear to safety. The last of the bikers had disappeared down the street, their engines fading into the distance. The school bus was finally free, and the tension that had gripped every inch of it for what felt like hours began to ease. Inside, the children slowly exhaled, their small hands unclenching from the edges of the seats, their eyes blinking rapidly as they tried to comprehend that the danger had passed. Some hugged their friends tightly, whispering words of relief and disbelief, while others simply stared out the windows, still processing what had just happened. Mr. Thompson allowed himself a deep breath, his hands loosening on the steering wheel for the first time in what seemed like forever. He looked at the children, their faces a mixture of awe, excitement, and lingering fear. "It's over now," he said softly, his voice calm and steady. "We're safe." "You all were very brave," the children whispered back, their voices filled with a mixture of relief and admiration for the way he had handled the situation, keeping them safe and calm during the ordeal. The newcomer who had confronted the bikers remained nearby for a few moments, ensuring that no one returned and that the street had returned to normal. The children pressed their faces to the windows, trying to get one last look at the person who had appeared just when they needed help the most. Their small hands waved, and some of them mouthed quiet words of thanks. Mr. Thompson nodded toward the newcomer, silently expressing his gratitude. The person returned a calm nod before mounting their motorcycle and riding off, leaving the children and the bus behind, but leaving an unforgettable impression. Inside the bus, excitement began to replace the lingering fear. The children whispered rapidly to each other, recounting the events in detail, their voices overlapping as they tried to make sense of what had happened. "Did you see him?" one child asked. "He was amazing," another replied. A few of the younger children were still quiet, holding on to small toys or each other, but their wide eyes told the story of relief and wonder. Mr. Thompson smiled softly at the scene, appreciating the children's reactions. They were safe, and despite the fear, they had witnessed something extraordinary. The bus began to move again, slowly rolling down the quiet streets. The sunlight glinted off the yellow paint, reflecting the calm after the storm. Mr. Thompson kept his eyes on the road, but he also allowed himself to enjoy the feeling of relief that was spreading through the bus. The children's whispers continued, their voices now filled with awe and excitement rather than fear. They talked about heroes and bravery, about how someone could arrive at the perfect moment and change everything. The morning that had started with routine had turned into a story that none of them would ever forget. Some of the children began to laugh softly, a sound that had been absent for so long, and the energy inside the bus shifted. The fear that had gripped them was replaced by relief and a new sense of admiration for the courage they had witnessed. Mr. Thompson spoke softly, keeping his voice calm and steady. "You all were brave today. You stayed calm, and that helped a lot. Remember, courage isn't just about fighting, it's also about staying calm when things seem scary." The children nodded, taking in his words, their faces thoughtful and reflective. As the bus continued down the familiar streets, the children began to relax more fully. Some leaned back in their seats, still talking excitedly about the events, while others continued to hold hands or small toys, processing the morning in their own ways. Mr. Thompson glanced in the mirrors, seeing the mixture of relief, awe, and wonder reflected in their faces. The weight of responsibility he had carried for so long began to ease, knowing that they were finally safe, and that help had arrived when it was needed most. The conversation inside the bus shifted naturally, moving from fear to admiration and storytelling. Children shared their impressions of the newcomer, describing their calm presence, the way they had confronted the bikers, and how the entire situation had changed in an instant. "I've never seen anyone so brave," one whispered. "He just walked up and made them stop," another said. Mr. Thompson smiled, listening to the children's excitement and understanding the impact the event would have on their memories. As they approached the school, the children's energy was palpable,